Hi everyone, in this video I would like to talk about validating crossplane compositions with Datree. So straight away jumping to what is Datree, it's basically a tool that prevents Kubernetes misconfigurations. There are various tools in this stack. There's Datree, there's Kyverno, there's OPA. We are using Datree this time, but other tools work similarly. So what is validation of crossplane compositions and why do we need it? If you're using Crossplane and you are going to production with it, it's not just playing around. You will notice at some point that writing compositions is toil, and you really want to make sure that this process is painless, automated, and you're not doing typos because you're working with YAML. So this is why we need to validate compositions. Obviously, the ideal scenario is if compositions are generated, but in this case we are having an assumption here that you actually create compositions by hand, and then you want to have a process that ensures that compositions are correct. So as far as Kubernetes validation goes, you have three main stages. We have a development stage where we can validate against the schema or validate against custom policies like we will do in this demo during the development time. So dev test loop, very fast feedback, we need a CLI, and we need to be able to ideally integrate the CLI with our development tooling or IDE. Another level is CI/CD. Once you are running locally and you're happy with your setup, you can actually trigger validation process on every check-in to master or on every check-in in general. And the third layer or level is actual runtime. So when compositions are being admitted to Kubernetes API, like every other artifact, you can validate them using admission controllers webhooks. And that we offers additionally kubectl plugins for more like an admin level tasks. So a couple of highlights. First of all, we don't want to write different policies for different stage. So one policy should work in every level, and that's the case with Datree. The validation mechanism should use built-in schema and should support validating schema. This is, by the way, already happening within Crossplane. If you know Crossplane already, since you're watching this video, then you know that Crossplane validates its input against an XRD. And this is nothing else as an open API schema spec that Datree also uses. Datree as a product provides additional dashboards and insight into your runs and all kinds of additional metrics that we'll see later. For me personally, the good thing about Datree is that you don't need to learn additional language like Rego with OPA, but also that comes with a limitation that you're targeting Kubernetes artifacts. In this case, Rego and OPA Gatekeeper are broader in spec and they can target different kinds of infrastructure. And Datree have really, really cool docs, so you can go ahead and check it out for sure. Right, so for the validation part itself, we don't need a running cluster. We are just validating static YAML files. But since this is a live environment, I have a cluster as well. So when you click on the link, it will be, by the way, in the description of the video, you can play around with Kubernetes as well. So we're going to quickly apply all those YAML files. We're gonna check if everything is okay. Kubernetes seems to be deployed all right. Everything is true and healthy. So what's the scenario? We have an app claim. In this case, it's a simple app claim that builds a stack of Kubernetes resources based on our claim. There is a composition behind this claim, obviously, And this composition is something we want to validate. One of the things we want to ensure is that the owner and project labels are correctly populated. And I'll show you in a second how to validate it. So our composition has one key patch set that is called common labels. We want to ensure that this patch set common labels is present when the composition is being submitted to the API or it's validated. So let's make sure that this already is the case. Looks like all the compositions have, all the apps have the owner, and actually it's service, not project. You know what I mean. So let's focus on Datree now. So Datree is not a free product, but they have a very generous free tier. Basically, you have to create an account. You can do this with GitHub or other identity provider, following the instructions on Datree. I already have an account, and you will have to provide a Datree token. Since you don't need to provide a credit card for Datree, this is relatively safe to do on a public infrastructure. So first you have to copy a token somehow using your token. I'm going to do this off screen. And then invoke this command. And then as an input, I can paste my token and click Datree config set Datree token. So now that you can communicate safely with the servers, and let's look a little bit about Datree policies. So Datree policies are all JSON schema based. So OpenAPI spec expresses all the policies that we want to apply. You can see here an interesting default message on failure. So every policy has this message that is being displayed if policy is violated. I don't know why this HTML is here. Some kind of markdown error. So the policy looks as follows. We have a custom rules array, identifier, name of the policy, and schema. So schema selects a kind of resource. In this case, we select a composition, and then we are using OpenAPI spec syntax to drill down into the property we're interested in. In this case, this is a property name of the patch set array. And then this property name has to have a name that is part of the provided enum. In this case, this enum only has one value, one member, so common label. So this policy expresses the check whether our patch set actually contains, whether our patch sets array contains a patch set that is named common labels. So pretty easy. Obviously, YAML schemas are not that easy and intuitive to write by hand, but you can also do the same in JSON, and it's taking some getting used to. But the good thing is that you stay within YAML. You don't need to move to Rigo, and there's a way also to automate some of those policies. Another policy that we're gonna work with is the fact that each base resource in a composition must have a name. This is a best practice from the Kubernetes, from the Crossplane docs. This is not enforced by the XRD, so it is not schema enforced. That's why we have to create our own policy for that. And the third policy is a little bit convoluted, but just for the sake of demonstration, we want to have a provider config ref that is not named default. You also want to name your provider config refs. Right, so we already have configured Datree token. We are logged in, and now we can publish Datree custom policy. So before we do this, I'm going to show you the file. That's how the whole file looks like. So we have on top this API version and the array of policies that are active right now, and the custom rules array that we've seen before. So let me switch real quick back to the portal, and I can click publish, and all is green. We have successfully published the policies. Let's take a look at Datree portal. So I already have logged into Datree, and those 3 policies are enabled. And you log in first time, you'll probably see many more policies because they're all default Kubernetes policies apply as well, but they are not active in our policy engine. So while clicking this checkbox, you can see only your policies. All right, this is, by the way, the octant that we can use to check the cluster as well. Now we want to run the tests. So I have a file prepared that is already invalid. So if we see invalid compositions, let me set numbering. So if we see composition here, it's intentionally incorrect. So if we see here, the common labels is actually misspelled with double S. So this policy should fail. Another one, which is this resources here. We also have a commented out name. So this is something we definitely should fail on. And also, I think name default. Right, we have a provider config with a name default. Rest of the composition is relatively straightforward. This composes Kubernetes objects. And I have another Killer Coda scenario that explains this in much more detail. So let's see. Now I'm gonna make this window a little shorter here. So clicking Datree validate, we are at this step. We are validating the invalid composition. So we are expecting that our composition file will basically fail. So let's see if this works. Right, it worked. So we have one of each composition, one of each rules have been validated once. One thing that is missing here, and I know that Datree is working on adding it, there's no reference to YAML path of where the error actually happened. So it would be nice to see, oh, hey, this happened at line X, or a full path to the YAML key element that caused it. So this can be also somehow automated. Right, so we'll also use this flag ignore missing schemas, and since our composition is not a built-in Kubernetes object, there's no publicly available schemas that you can validate against. But as I mentioned before, the schemas are automatically validated because we have XRD in the background. So we wouldn't be able to actually compile quote-unquote composition into the cluster. But it's also possible to export the XRD and import it into Datree, so we can have this validating step against schema as well. So now this was an incorrect composition. Clear the screen and gonna run the correct composition. So this composition has no errors. It's the same composition, and as expected, there is nothing telling us that we made an error. And you can see this link here. When I click it, it takes me back to Datree portal, and I can see history. So you can see I was running this for a while. This is our previous run that is incorrect. We have those three incorrect rules, three errors, and run that we just did a second ago. Everything is correct. Again, this missing ability to link to content of the file where the error originates from would be really helpful. Right, so let's go back to our Killer Coda. What is also interesting is that Datree can, imagine you have folder full with compositions. Datree can use glob pattern to apply all the validation to all the files within this folder structure. So here I have just a glob pattern that does star composition. And this would actually run on two files. We can see passing camel validation 2.2, and this is one file that didn't pass. It tells me the name of the file, and another file that did pass. This name is omitted. Datree also enables me to export the result of the validation as JSON and other formats as well. So let us actually install a JQ real quick on this environment, since it's missing. And I can run the same test that we just ran a moment ago, but this time output it as JSON and pipe it to JQ for nicer formatting. So now we can see the same information happen, the same information is displayed, it's just in different format. So this is definitely more interesting for consuming by some automated tooling or reporting of your choice that you can publish, so you don't have to rely on the Datree reporting or this history view, but you can also create your own. Right, so since this is a public environment, again, the token that you provide is not connected to credit card, so there's no risk that something's gonna happen, but just to be sure, you can unset the Datree token variable and then overwrite it additionally in the config file before deleting the environment. So key takeaways. Validating compositions against custom policies is a must when you really start thinking about going to production and having actually a lot of compositions. Either generating them, it's probably better, but validating them is equally important. So development practices such as validation are critical to successfully implementing DevOps principles. So key takeaway, composable infrastructure at Crossplane is easy to do. Well, if you know Crossplane, it can be validated by a tool like Datree. Again, you can have other tools to do that do something similar. And the benefits is bringing good software development practices to the platform teams. This is probably worth another video or blog post, but the shifting left movement, where we take, we empower developers by being in charge of their own infrastructure, has this interesting mirror benefit where platform teams are also, or DevOps people are using dev practices for the infrastructure and operational concerns, but it's not always really well implemented. So moving those like validation or various policies, moving them more towards ops is definitely super beneficial. So thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. Here are a bunch of links to Datree, Abound Marketplace, where you can find Crossplane providers, and you can see what else, what other powerful things you can do with Crossplane via Abound. There's a couple of blogs that I really like, and I'm quoting them here as well. And come drop by to a Crossplane Slack channel, say hello. There's a lot of friendly folks that are ready to help you and answer any questions. So yeah, links will be in the description again. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.